I wrestle with what seems, to me at least, as something of a conundrum of India's simultaneous active membership in both the Quad and the BRICS, and for that matter, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
We can chew gum and walk at the same time.
All right, but can you be all things to all people and all regions? Does that really work?
You know, look, it's not that we are all things to all people. We are ourselves to all people, and the idea that countries must operate in a particular context or a particular structure, that's a very post-45 Cold War-ish idea. Times have moved on. So, there are today a lot of countries who feel that their freedom of choice, their operational flexibility should not be constrained because their interests are much more complicated and much more diverse than the binary, picture which the Cold War era represented. So, certainly this, what I say applies to India, but look at the BRICS. I mean, you have today countries like UAE or Egypt or Saudi Arabia. Now, these are countries which have had strong relations with the West, still have strong relations with the West. So it's not like by being in the BRICS or being in SCO, you are necessarily sort of turning your back on your other relationships. I think it is that ability to operate in multiple contexts and multiple spaces, and that to me is a characteristic of the current era.
Well, can you help us understand a little bit about what India gets, what benefits accrue to India from participation in the Quad or participation in the BRICS or the SCO? Is it the same? Are these substantially different? And which of these, do some of these represent the future and some of them represent the past?
No, look, I think all of them represent the future, partly because I think I'm myself part of the future. So you're kind of growing with that. If you look at the Quad, you have 4 countries. They're all market economies. They're all political democracies. They're all pluralistic societies. They also are all maritime powers. And they have a common interest in dealing with the Indo-Pacific in a certain way. They have that ability to cooperate and communicate with each other, work with each other, and carry other countries along with them. So we see this in a way as a non-treaty way of working with countries. I would argue that perhaps this is the future, that the era of arguing over who's paying who, what share and is that fair. You don't have those arguments in the Quad. So you don't have those arguments because everybody is doing, what they think is right, and there's a kind of a sort of understanding about it. In the case of the BRICS, it has a different history. It's a history of an era where Western dominance on the global order was very much more. And so you had really a collection of non-Western countries who felt they weren't getting a fair hearing in the overall scheme of things, and that by getting together on issues on which their interests overlapped, they would be able to make their voices more strongly felt. And I think it's also served its purpose. So to me, each one is a different facet of I'm now talking again from my perspective, a different facet of our interests and our activities. So I wouldn't compare them because I think they have different histories, different composition, often different themes. The SCO again has the history. It's more Eurasian. It was focused much more on countering radicalism, terrorism. That's where it began. And today, it's perhaps evolved into something more. So for us to have this range of options, combination of partners working multiple agendas at the same time, that's...
Which seems to have not brought benefit. There have been government changes there which seem to be potentially adverse for India. So I'm curious how Dr. Jaishankar thinks about that. And in particular with Bangladesh, there's been lots of very concerning news about the religious minorities, Hindus and Buddhists in Bangladesh. I'm curious how India thinks about its role in protecting those minorities there.
We stepped forward in respect of Sri Lanka when it was facing a very deep economic crisis, and very frankly, when nobody else came forward. And I'm very glad we did it. We did it in a timely manner. We did it on scale. We put out $4.5 billion effectively. And what it did was it stabilized the Sri Lankan economy, and the rest of it was up to them. Now, at the time we did it, it was not that we had a political conditionality which accompanied that. I mean, we were doing it as a good neighbor who did not want to see that kind of economic meltdown at our doorstep. So I think what happens politically in Sri Lanka, that's for their politics to work out. I mean, at the end of the day, each one of our neighbors would have, their own particular dynamics. It's not our intention to, to suggest that their dynamics must necessarily, adhere to what we might consider as being better for us. I think this is a real world. I mean, everybody makes their choices, and then countries adjust to each other and find ways of working it out. In the case of Bangladesh, I would say it's a little bit different. What we have done over the last, particularly over the last decade, is to do projects of various kinds which have been good for both of us. That, economic activity overall has picked up, logistics of that region has improved, and I think, both countries have gained a lot out of that. So I would urge you not to be deterministic about it. It's not as though India is seeking to control every political move of every neighbor. That's not how it works. It doesn't work not just for us, it doesn't work for anybody else. I mean, every country will have its own dynamics, and in foreign policy, you try to read it, you try to anticipate it, you also respond to it. And I'm very confident at the end of it all in our neighborhood, the realities of interdependence, of mutual benefit, of the fact that our ability to get along will serve both our interests, those realities will assert themselves. That's been the history. Look over the last few years. I mean, every few years something happens in our region and people suggest that there is some kind of irretrievable situation out there. You then see the correctives beginning to manifest themselves. So I would take it in that spirit, and I'm quite confident that in both these cases, I would expect that our relationship would continue to be positive and constructive.